You ever get the feeling you're missing the real story when it comes to world politics? Like, you see the big speeches, the treaty signings on the news, but you just know something else is going on underneath it all? Well, today, we're going to pull back that curtain. We're diving into a theory that shows you how the world really works, not by looking at the big stuff, but at the small stuff.
So let's start here with this quote from the philosopher Maurice Blanchot. Nothing happens, this is the everyday. It's a fascinating puzzle, right? Our daily lives can feel so mundane, like we're just treading water. But he asks, what's the meaning in all that? Is something actually moving, even when it looks like we're standing still?
And that leads us to the big question for today. What if we've been looking for politics in all the wrong places? What if the real action, the real engine of global events, isn't found in those huge headline-grabbing moments, but in the millions of ordinary, everyday interactions that we barely even notice? To really get our heads around this, we have to start looking for the extraordinary hidden inside the ordinary. And we're going to start with something about as ordinary as it gets: a coffee break.
You know, when we think of diplomacy, we picture these formal meetings, right? Big summits, clashing national interests. But what if it's actually more like an anthill? A buzzing, chaotic collection of countless tiny actions. Think about it. The gossip that happens during a coffee break in a negotiation, the political message that's being sent by the choice of menu at a state dinner, or even the hidden symbols that get chosen for the back of a euro coin. That's where the real work of politics often gets done.
So, how in the world do we make sense of all this seemingly random stuff? Well, there's a framework for that. A way to put on a new pair of glasses to see these hidden connections. It's called practice theory.
At its heart, practice theory is pretty simple. It says that our social world, everything from our family dynamics to international relations, is built out of practices. And these aren't just random things people do. They're patterns of action that are packed with social meaning, things we all participate in, a lot of the time without even thinking about it.
So let's break down how a simple doing becomes a full-blown practice. It's kind of like a three-step process. First, you just have raw behavior. A person is running. That's it. Okay, now let's add some meaning. It becomes an action. The person is running after a thief. See? Now there's intent. But here's the magic leap. We add social context. That person is a police officer on duty. Suddenly, their action is part of a shared, understood social practice called catching a thief. That's how we build social reality from the ground up.
And this whole way of thinking rests on some really huge ideas. First, that all the little things we say and do every single day are what literally create our social world. It also just throws out those old divides like micro versus macro or local versus global. With this lens, power isn't something that's just held by a king or a president. No, it's embedded in our actions, it's embodied in our posture, and it lives in our relationships. In the end, it suggests the fundamental building block of society isn't the individual, it's the connections between us.
Okay, now here is where this theory gives us a really powerful tool for analysis. Because it turns out that these practices we've been talking about, well, they have two very different faces. They can work in completely opposite ways. And here's the core tension, the central ambiguity. The very same engine of everyday action can be used to build up the social order, to keep things stable and predictable. Or it can be used to subvert it, to crack it open and create space for something new.
We can basically split them into two camps. On one side, you have ordering practices. Their goal is to stabilize everything, to create what we think of as normal. A diplomat learning the proper protocol is a perfect example. It just reinforces the existing system. But on the other side, you have disordering practices. Their goal is to shake things up, to destabilize that order. This is all about resistance, improvisation, and all the subtle ways that ordinary people can push back.
A perfect, and I mean perfect, example of an ordering practice is this concept called habitus. It's basically how this social order gets programmed right into our bodies. The way we learn to stand, to sit, to speak, to look at people. We just take it for granted as the way things are, but it's an incredibly powerful force for keeping social hierarchies exactly where they are.
Okay, so this is all fascinating theory, but so what? Why does any of this actually matter in the real world? Well, this is where practice theory really gets its edge. It's a tool for uncovering hidden power.
So where should we be looking for world politics? Literally everywhere. It's happening in the subtle choice of words in a draft document. It's in the political act of drawing a map. It's on the golf course between two leaders. It's in the choreography of a waltz at a state function. It's even in the architecture of a meeting room or in the flood of social media posts. Power is being performed in all these unexpected, everyday places.
And this theory can even help us understand some of the darkest, most difficult parts of human history. Let's take Hannah Arendt's famous phrase, the banality of evil. She coined it when she was observing the trial of the Nazi official Adolf Eichmann.
Practice theory gives us a chillingly clear framework for understanding what she meant. It shows how the most monstrous atrocities don't always come from monstrous evil people. They can be the final result of millions of tiny, ordinary, bureaucratic practices. Just filing the right paperwork, arranging transportation schedules, doing your job, all performed by people Arendt described as terrifyingly normal.
So this is the real takeaway, the crucial point. By focusing on these everyday practices, theory doesn't just show us how power operates in hidden ways, it also shows us where the cracks are. It reveals how those disordering practices, resistance, defiance, change, are always possible, even in the smallest of ways. It's the critical antidote to the banality of just following orders. You know, once you start looking at the world this way, you can't unsee it. You start to see practices everywhere. So let's wrap up by talking about how you can use this new toolkit to make sense of the world around you.
And just so you know, this isn't some dusty old theory that's just sitting on a shelf. It's alive. It's evolving. Researchers right now are looking at how our bodies and our emotions, like the feeling of pride or shame or embarrassment during a negotiation, can totally shape international events. And they're digging into the massive role that materials and technology, things like algorithms, social media, even physical objects, play in global politics today.
And maybe that's the ultimate power of this whole idea. It takes what we call high politics and it pulls it right down from its pedestal. It makes it seem almost trivial, mundane, everyday. And in doing that, it makes it accessible to all of us. It gives us a way to investigate it, to understand it, and most importantly, to critique it.
So I'll leave you with a question. The next time you're just going about your day, whether you're in a meeting at work, or scrolling through your phone, or just talking with friends, ask yourself, what are the unspoken rules here? What are the everyday little sayings and doings that are actually shaping this reality? Because that's where you'll find where the power really lies.